Dungeon and Dragons players, what's your advice for new players?
Wingardium Leviosa.
Help your DM by being creative yourself. Not just your character background. Tell the DM where you think the story is going, what you think of NPCs, things your character would like to do, what you think would be in a town. Hell, think up the personality of your own NPCs that your character might know and have fun interacting with if it's cool with the DM. Being creative is a lot of work. Help your DM out with ideas that are fun for the party, not ones that give you an advantage.
Wingardium Leviosa.
It's not a video game. I know that sounds obvious, but people try to play D&D like it's Skyrim. There are real consequences to your actions. Robbing a guy for fun can result in you and maybe even your party being thrown in jail. Fighting a giant out of the blue with no preparation with half of your party missing and under-leveled will result in your character dying. Like, for real dying. As in, you will have to make a new character. It's an RPG, but it's not like a JRPG or an MMORPG. It's more of a role-playing game than a role-playing game.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Be creative and get into character. You're playing a character you've created, now speak to each other in the party as that character. It's nerdy as fuck, but trust me. It makes it so much more entertaining.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I like to play characters who have obvious personality flaws. There's something drastically wrong with their personality. Used to play a paladin who dove headfirst into everything. No plans, no caution, no hesitation, that stuff is for cowards. Even when it was bad for the party or himself, that's who he was. He actually died that way, ran into a wall of fire because he thought he was fireproof. And then I played a rogue who was a pathological liar. It was really fun. He made up these obviously fake stories, responded to even basic questions with outright lies, even wore disguises to pose as a different personality. Again, even when telling the truth would be the best choice for the game, he'd lie because that's who he is. The point is, your character doesn't have to be some kind of perfect adventurer, who always makes the smartest decisions. Willingly making a bad decision is
Wingardium Leviosa.
often more entertaining.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Go ahead and make your first character awesome at everything and get it out of your system. Then make your characters with flaws. Flaws make the character real and fun. No one wants to listen to stories about how you roll a modified 45 with your +6 sword and +8 strength bonus and blah blah blah. They will laugh at how the character who had a terrible lizard phobia saw a little gecko and shrieked, knocked the torchbearer into the archer who then missed his shot, which went wide, ricocheted off of an alabaster carving of a giant mushroom and stuck in the right ass cheek of the mage who only had 1 horsepower left, and the whole party had to pool their funds together to get him rezzed.
Wingardium Leviosa.
A lot of the advice here is great. I've got something to add that I don't think has been addressed yet. Don't be that guy. You may not know what I'm talking about yet, but you'll know it when you see it. That guy is the player who plays games or texts on their phone whenever it isn't their turn, then takes forever to complete their turn because they want a recap of what everyone else did that round. Pay attention. Be part of the team. Realize that although you're part of the cast, you're not the only main character, and the spotlight isn't yours alone. P.S. Also, roll your dice somewhere flat, where it can be seen by everyone, and preferably in a location where it's not likely to knock over anything on the battle mat, if you use one of those.
Wingardium Leviosa.
The most asked question on gaming forums is how do I deal with a problem player? And the answer is always talk to them. Learn your character. Make sure you understand what your spells, abilities and feats do. It sucks realizing too late that you had an ability that could have been useful and you forgot. If you don't understand something, Ask the GM. On the subject of GM, or DM for D&D, keep an open line of communication with them. Let them know where you want your character to go and they can help. A good GM knows it is about making the game fun for everyone. This may be through challenging combat or through making them feel like total badasses. Try to work a plot hook or two into your character's background. This both helps the GM and leads to character development. Something as simple as a missing sibling can open up a world of possible stories. Try to separate yourself from
Wingardium Leviosa.
the character slightly. Think in terms of, would my character know that? How would they respond? Sure, go know that skeleton has 12 hit points and ignores piercing damage, but would your dwarf barbarian who has just left his mine last week? On that note, make sure it gels well with the rest of the party. There is little reason for the band of morally ambiguous pirates to keep the paladin around.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Don't be chaotic, stupid murdering as you please.
Wingardium Leviosa.
If you're talking about alignments, a lot of people don't understand chaotic. It's assumed that if you have a chaotic character they will be random, killing as they please, stuff like that, but what it really means is that they do not feel hindered by laws and moral implications. Now of course their actions vary based on if they are good or evil, but if you have a chaotic character who kills everything, odds are they are quite literally insane.
Wingardium Leviosa.
By far is to find a good group that want to have fun and not be so strict. It is a social game, have fun with it. If it becomes about numbers and seriousness, it becomes a bore and a job. Make up some bullshit story and write it down about your character and try to think like the character, not you, play the part.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Find a regular schedule. Me and my friends can never keep things going regularly, and I think the best RP is when sessions are near each other as you're still immersed from last time, but it's been like 2 months since I've last played and I think most of the others have forgotten where we are even at.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Character optimization doesn't matter as much as you think it does. And yet, it does matter at least a little bit. A low charisma sorcerer may sound fun for session 1, but then if you get frustrated because the other party members are actually doing stuff while you're not, please let me, I told you so.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Nope. New player should be told the most basic stuff and everything else should happen with hand-holding in the first session. Then guide him/her to the passages of the rule books that are relevant to what happened and to some extended core rules. Only if a new player already has fun playing the game, he or she should be forced to learn the rules. Source: 40io, started with 13.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Avoid the dick measuring contest. If you all have the best character, it's going to get boring very quickly. Add quirks and make things enjoyable.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My group has a character who has no friends and wants friends more than anything. He was healing townspeople after a battle, rolled to make friends. Critical failure. He made no friends. The person he was attending to at the time refused his help and died.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Ah, yes. I first started playing with my immature group of friends early in high school. Needless to say, our characters sexually violated each other at nearly every corner. Not a dungeon went by where we didn't have a disagreement over loot, roll strength checks, and the DM would have to stare into the eyes of one unfortunate soul and begin, as he enters you.
Wingardium Leviosa.
That is the bane, well, one of them, of my gaming career. You are the DM? You get to play every other person in the world, let the party handle the party shit.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Emo, it's possible to do it properly, especially if it's an explicitly temporary character. A mage who hired you to help defend her tower, a prisoner you helped escape then armed accompanying you for revenge, etc. Someone to provide some inside knowledge and a bit of damage, then go home after a session or two.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Character optimization doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Also, it doesn't, or shouldn't, play like a video game where an encounter is set in stone and you have to meet a certain requirement to beat it. The DM should be considerate. They should be making a fun and challenging experience, not brutal and punishing. I've played with DMs who run their games like Dark Souls. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Wingardium Leviosa.
The amount of times my party has let someone die or missed something important because they were in that video game mentality. Like we hear someone scream in terror down a hall, so we run to check it out, but there is a door off to the side on the way and have to stop and check the room for loot. Then they act surprised when they get where the screaming was and just find some dead bodies.
Wingardium Leviosa.
DM is gracious enough to give you decent starting money, buy a horse to carry all your loot. Don't argue with other players or the DM. If another player is being a dick, bring it up with the DM after the game. If the DM is being a dick, find another group to play with. But never halt the game for drama. Also, as a DM, know that you can always lie about die rolls if it makes the game better, but I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time. Also, never, ever admit it to your players. Always put fun first. Remember that it's just a game. Oh boy, finally a post for me. I've been a DM for about 9 years now. You don't have to enforce the rules to the letter, or allow the rules to dictate what you can and can't do. You're more than a walking stat block. In our games, people are usually rewarded for coming up with clever ideas outside of casting magic missile or beheading everyone in the room. Those zany, genius schemes are what make the game memorable. For new DMs, it's worth it to run a pre-made campaign for your first few games, but absolutely do not stick to the script. If the game veers and changes direction on the whim of the players, then go with it. Nobody likes a railroaded campaign. Don't roll an evil character with the intention to fuck with the party. You will become that guy. Always buy rope and a long stick. Rope is invaluable and the stick can be used to prod things you think might be a trap. If you're
Wingardium Leviosa.
Talk with your DM and make sure you understand what you are getting into. Have them help you get your idea into the world. Each D&D table is vastly different from the next. Some groups are Diablo-style dungeon crawls, others might not even encounter an enemy for the entire session, sometimes more. r/D&D is a great place to ask questions. I also highly recommend you start watching Critical Role. First few episodes have a bit of audio issues, but they improve, I promise. It is a group of voices actors playing D&D and they are all phenomenal, and watching them will be enjoyable and make you a better player. If you are having trouble finding a group, try Roll20.net, it is an online tabletop simulator. I hope this helps.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Just roll with the punches and try to help everyone have a good time. Be imaginative too. Ask your party members and the DM if some crazy thing you imagine is possible. They'll probably roll dice to see if it is.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I currently GM a group of fairly new players and it's so much fun because they are much more likely to just try crazy shit because it sounds funny, and would totally be awesome if it works.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My friends and I are starting a campaign soon. I've never played. I literally asked the DM to make my character, a half-orc barbarian, unable to read/write because he was, in fact, raised by wolves.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Put on seasoned GM hat, talks in over-the-top southern accent. Boy, that ain't nearly the weirdest shit I have seen in my days. Not being able to read and write is fairly common in PCs, Shit gets really weird when PCs are like I only speak the language of wolves and eat my meat raw and only piss with my leg angled sideways, and then they get annoyed when the party druid, the only guy who can talks to animals, treats them like a slave. Edit, I hope you have a lot of fun in your campaign. Going for a weird character the first time around is a good idea. You will probably play more vanilla characters later anyway.
Wingardium Leviosa.
All means do so, but these things can be stressful/difficult for newer DMs, so just don't be a dick about it. Spend some time thinking about your character's backstory, but also let him/her develop organically as well. You want a good idea of your character's motivations/mannerisms, but let your character evolve and grow based on the interactions with other people in your party. Try your best to fulfill the main party roles. It's certainly possible to play a campaign made entirely of spellcaster, and this can be fun in its own right, but for newer players, a balanced party is best. Each edition has its own loosely defined roles, so try to find out what they are and communicate with your party to make sure you have as many of them covered as possible. Don't be afraid to ask your DM for some loose guidelines in creating your character. It's totally fair to ask the DM what kinds of. A few pieces of advice. Learn the rules. You don't have to memorize every rulebook from cover to cover, unless you're into that, but in general, the better you understand the rules, the more fun you'll have, since you'll have to spend less time looking things up and asking how do I pick your battles, literally and figuratively. If you're coming from a video game background, know that D&D is usually not designed in such a way that you can recklessly charge into every battle, and make it out alive through brute force. It requires a lot more teamwork, coordination, and strategy to be successful. Depending on your DM, death is an inevitability in most campaigns. Additionally, there will be fights/arguments over rules and other things. Learn to let it go and don't just argue to be right. RP your character, but be mindful of the other people in the game. It's cool if you want to.
Wingardium Leviosa.
RP a dick or an annoying know-it-all, but it's what my character would do isn't a blanket excuse for driving everyone else insane. I've seen people be asked to leave games for getting on everyone else's nerves, so just be mindful. Let go of your hang-ups around feeling like a fool. Everyone will have the most fun if they feel empowered to talk in character, act out what their character is doing, use accents, etc. You're going to feel silly in the beginning, but the more you give yourself over to it, the more fun you're going to have. Don't let the DM railroad you. This is a common mistake made by newer DMs. They don't know how to be flexible/adaptable, so they create one path and will do everything in their power, including acts of God, to keep you on that path. Similarly, don't stress out your DM just because you can. If you have a legitimate reason to stray from the beaten path, by accommodating. It may be someone else in your group's favorite thing, so give them their chance to shine. These are some of the lessons that I've learned, often the hard way, over the past 10 or so years of playing D&D. Hopefully they're helpful. Edit, added a few monsters you can expect to come up against regularly for determining things like favored enemies/languages, etc. There are a lot of skills/feats/abilities/spells, etc. that can be extremely valuable, but also extremely situational, and it's totally fair game to ask the DM if you'll get value out of them before wasting your precious resources on them. Be creative. D&D is a unique experience in that what you can do is pretty much only bounded by what you can imagine. It can be hard to think outside the box, but the more you train yourself to do so, the more successful you'll be and the more fun you'll have. D&D is not a fast-paced game. I've spent entire sessions on one encounter, and gone through dungeons that have taken weeks to clear. Similarly, I've had many play sessions that were entirely RP focused and didn't have any combat at all. If RP is not your thing, be patient and
Wingardium Leviosa.
if you roll a critical fumble, own it.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I'm new to this, but we were playing Pathfinder recently and my fighter had a crit miss on a cleave attack. GM says the axe goes flying and I miss the first guy but I get to roll a bare-handed attack on the second for fun. I crit miss again. Since I was attacking in the cleave arch, I had to roll for unarmed damage against myself. My character had a pretty bad headache.
Wingardium Leviosa.
So here's my problem. There are no good DMs around here. No one has any experience. It's so hard to get this shit started. Edit wow. So much feedback. I'm so thankful. Now all I need to do is find a group of players who can get along.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Then you must become the DM.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I am trying this, but it's gonna be janky for a while.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Try running a beginner's box game. The Star Wars RPGs, Pathfinder, D&D all have beginner's boxes. I ran 4 sessions of 2 different RPGs prior to trying the beginner's box for Star Wars Age of Rebellion, and I learned plenty from running that session. But just keep running games and with practice you'll get better. Write down what went well and what went wrong, and ask your players for input too.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Don't attack the gazebo. Those things are deadly.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Unless you horribly overpower it while catching it by surprise. I jokingly included a gazebo in a game once. My players decided it would be safest to sneak up on it and burn it to the ground. I don't remember all the details, but there was a lot of fire involved. Probably the closest any one of my games ever has come to actual pyrotechnics.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I always say if you're playing with some friends, try to learn most of the rules but in general just have fun. If you guys get really hung up on a rule, it's the DM's job to enforce/mitigate this. Don't get bogged down on the little stuff, just have an adventure. Edit, also, fuck weight. No one ever worries about how much they're carrying.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Going to have to disagree with you here. New players need to be guided. Full knowledge of the books is something that comes in time. Give them the basics of what they need to know for that day, and then guide them on what they need to know and where to find it.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Fucking have fun. No one is 100% serious all the time, even paladins. For that matter, play a pally. They are one of the most versatile classes that are extremely easy to play.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My favorite character I made was a gnome paladin who followed the ways of Garl Glittergold. Me and the rogue would go out and rob people blind, and the GM would allow it without a loss of powers as long as I was ribbing that the stolen riches were for the greater glory of Garl. Lawful good can be very subjective based on your choice of deity. Fun times with that group.
Wingardium Leviosa.
A brand new player should have a basic understanding of how the game works, but not worry about specifics. Once you start getting more experience, you should learn them. That being said, the DM's word is law. If the DM says to roll something, roll it, otherwise don't.
Wingardium Leviosa.
But I always get people who try to do stupid shit like I kill him, what do I roll for that? And I'm just like, you don't, bro. That's not how this works. That's another party member.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I mean, your character can try to do things. Hell, if they creative they can try anything. Toll well and you might succeed. Roll poorly, time to play hard mode. Failure is just a different path. DM, you want to kill him. How does your character want to kill him? Player, I want to stab him. DM, sneaky or not sneaky? Player, I just want to do it. DM, hair? Well, I guess you can try. Roll the d20 for an attack, no surprise attack for you. Hidden roll. Your impulsiveness betrays you as you fumble for your blade. Or your bloodlust drives you to lunge smoothly into an attack. Then there's the issue of playing the character and being part of a gaming group. Sometimes it's fun to play hard mode and have a bloodlusting loner, and sometimes it's realistic to run from everything because your DM sends you horrors beyond the scope of your abilities. But characters that say no to
Wingardium Leviosa.
working together or even to advancing any plot is just not fun for some groups. Players that actively disrupt the game for others need a different group of players or a different character.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Never touch someone else's dice without permission.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Hell, I've got hundreds of dice. If someone needs more dice, I'll give them an unopened set they can keep.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I dunno, sometimes abilities require a bunch of d6 for damage rolls, so we will all toss them our d6 so he can just roll them all at one time and count the damage. But it's not like anyone is just touching people's stuff without permission.
Wingardium Leviosa.
But it's not like anyone is just touching people's stuff without permission. If I'm going, I always bring a bunch of house dice, especially if it's one of those games where you can be rolling a handful of dice in one go. And at this point, all of my fellow gamers are adults with jobs, and they can afford $3 worth of dice.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Support your party mates. Don't go out of your way to discover things they want kept secret, and find reasons your character would help them, not reasons they wouldn't. Even if it would go against your alignment. Also, decide who your character is before you decide what they are. A disgraced nobleman who's struggling to make his way in a new kingdom is way more interesting than a half-elf fighter.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Rogues always get shafted by this. I mean, they're more often than not useless if they can't do the sneaky and dirty deeds. Also, the paladin doesn't like seeing the thief do roguish things, or even knowing that there's a thief in the party. Not to mention there is no sneaking with a paladin, armor or no. And you're as sneaky as your least sneaky party member. That being said, if you're a roguish or scouty type of character, when you get found, and it's going to happen, your first action should not be drawing your weapons and rolling initiative. Your ass either mints their tongue as silver, or you start legging it. Thieves and rangers will not win when facing off against 2 to 4 fighters by themselves.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Remember, your goal is to be having fun. If you like role-playing, go for it, it's quite fun. If you don't but other people are, just half roll along with it, the RP people will be happy. It's okay if your character dies. Feel free to come up with unique solutions to a problem. Part of the fun of tabletops is that you have the freedom to do zany choices. Just remember, the more far out there are choices, the more likely the DM will only have a canned response for it. Making decisions purely based on what gets you the most gold and XP is boring. It makes your group decisions predictable and doesn't get you involved in the world.
Hey guys, this is the Rogue YouTuber here. I recently had a big change in my life. I had a baby daughter. Here she is. If you could do me a favor and remember to hit the subscribe button and bang the bell, I'm hoping to really create a YouTube channel that really gets people excited and brings people the best, most interesting content collated from across the internet. I'm saving up to save my little girl to Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department. So please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.